what we are going to continue to see is names roll out for the new WWE Hall of Fame. I can't believe this is real, Eric, but we've got not one, not two, but three entries announced. We had none when we recorded last week, but now we've announced three different folks. The headliner in Philadelphia, so it seems to be the headliner, will be Paul Heyman, the former Paul E. Dangerously, the guy, the wizard behind ECW, the talking head from Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW and the Dangerous Alliance. And man, what a run he's had with WWE, whether it's Brock Lesnar or it's CM Punk or it's Roman Reigns. I mean, it's been really impressive to see what he's done inside of WWE as a manager, and then to know all the horsepower he had behind the scenes. Man, Philadelphia, I'm for it. Congrats to Mr. Heyman. What'd you think?
I'm excited. Obviously, tons of respect for Paul. Paul and I, we go all the way back to about 1987, 1988 is when I first met Paul. Paul worked for Vern Gagne in the AWA. He worked with a cat by the name of Rob Russin. Rob Russin was like the premier used car salesman in professional wrestling. But he sold live events. You had to be kind of a used car salesman to sell AWA live events in particular because the market was not really hot back in the late 80s. But Rob and Paul worked together on the live event side of Vern's business, and that's when I first met Paul. We didn't really work together much. There was no reason for us to work together. I was in syndication and sales and production backstage, and Paul was out really on the road trying to sell live events. But that's when I first became aware of Paul. And then, of course, got to WCW, and Paul was there. And he left shortly after I got there. Paul went on to found ECW, and the rest is kind of history. But during that period of time, Paul and I maintained kind of I won't say love-hate, but there was tension between us. Always respect, but tension. And then, of course, during the ECW, WCW Nitro era, that got elevated quite a bit, and there was threats of lawsuits back and forth. And I was being accused of stealing ECW talent and trying to put them out of business because Paul did a masterful job of positioning himself as the underdog.
Yes.
And he was, obviously, but he embraced it. Unlike Tony Khan, for example, who came out right away and talked about being competitive with WWE, and still to this day. And in one of the more recent press releases I saw, or interviews that I saw with Tony, he, claiming that, 2025 is going to be AEW's year, where they're going to go from being a startup to a legitimate challenger brand. I asked you, Conrad, challenge to what? Challenge for market share? I don't think that's ever going to happen. But Paul did the opposite. Paul, rather than come out and saying, I'm going to be bigger than WWE or I'm going to be bigger than WCW, he didn't do that. He went the opposite direction. Lesson to be learned, Tony Khan. Embrace being the underdog. Quit taking shots at the big dog on the neighborhood, because you're never going to beat the big dog. But if you embrace the fact that you're an underdog, people will support you because of that. And you won't create this tribalism that everybody's talking about now, that was really created by Tony Khan and a lot of the talent on the roster who were constantly taking shots at WWE. They created the tribalism. And had they been able to deliver and become more successful and actually become a legitimate challenger, then I think people would have gotten on board with the idea. But obviously they haven't. And I think there's a real obvious lesson to be learned there in what Paul did by embracing the underdog status, even though he was funded by WWE, which is even more hilarious. But Paul did a great job of that and got so much support as a result of it. And eventually, when I went to work at WWE as a talent in 2001 or whatever it was, 2002, 2001, I don't remember anymore, Paul was there, and we became really pretty good friends. But we kept up the illusion that there was heat between us because we both talked about it. It's like, someday there could be some money in this. We didn't know how or why or when. Obviously, it never happened. But there was always that potential. So we, publicly, we kind of kept up we kept the heat alive, so to speak, publicly. But behind the scenes, we became pretty good friends.
As I'm looking at that old school photo of you and Paul Heyman in the ring inside of WWE. I remember that segment because it wasn't just the two of you. You also had Vince McMahon standing in the ring with you. And boy, how weird is it to think Paul Heyman's going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Eric Bischoff's going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Vince McMahon, not so much.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
That is really weird when you think about it.
That's really weird. But somebody else who is going in the Hall of Fame, and we're so excited about this, Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham are going in as the U.S. Express. Now, Barry Windham is already in as a member of the Four Horsemen. He wasn't in as a solo act, but he went in with the Horsemen. IRS somehow was not in. What an iconic character he was. I was shocked to hear that IRS was not in, but they are going in this year. And of course, we know in real life, Mike Rotundo is the father of Bray Wyatt. And we know we lost Bray. And if we're not going to induct Bray this year, and maybe we will, as long as his dad's on stage, that family's going to have a cool moment. This is what wrestling's all about to me. I'm so glad to see they're going in.
I am too. I never really got to know Mike very well. Obviously worked with him for a brief period of time, but never really got to know him. Barry, on the other hand, I got to know pretty well and spent a lot of time with Barry. Barry was very close to Dusty, and as a result, like I said, I got to know Barry pretty well. What a classy guy. I can't say enough great things about Barry Windham. He is a class act for sure.
What I find interesting too is, there's lots of speculation, even on this show. Hey, they should put Bray in this year. Bray's real name, of course, Windham Rotundo. The tag team going in, Windham Rotundo. The other name that we should announce that's going in the WWE Hall of Fame, Bull Nakano. Man, talk about a throwback. This was a real pioneer, way ahead of her time. She was doing that strong style type of wrestling for the ladies long before there was a women's revolution or evolution or whatever you want to call it here in America. Man, what a trailblazer. And she spent some time not only in the WWE, but over there in WCW too. It's pretty cool to see Bull Nakano getting a little international flavor to this year's Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I should check in with Sonny and see what, Sonny Ono stays in touch with so many of the Japanese talent. I'd be curious to see what Bull Nakano is up to, what she's doing for a living today.
I won't give you a spoiler, but I know, and it will shock you. And when you see her, you won't believe it.
Well, just tell me. Come on, you don't have to tease me like that.
Well, it's some fun we should just hang on to.
All right.